Welcome to a new episode of Big Bun Game Club. I'm gonna talk about Lost Judgment. I played this game for a week, I beat it, and it really left me feeling disappointed. Like, I really wanted to like this game, but there were just so many things that left me just like, come on, why? It really felt like that this game wasn't ready for this year, and they just kind of threw it out. So let's just get right into the gameplay of Lost Judgment. Some things do return from the first game, such as the trailing mission. In the beginning of the second game, you're trailing this one guy in a city, and some ways that you can hide feel very refined and seamless. However, there's a few parts of this trailing mission that it kind of feels like bullshit, where it he goes down a certain alleyway or whatever, and it's like, where do I hide? Like, there really is no time or place for me to hide, and what do you want me to do? And it got to the point where I just waited for him to be outside my range for me to move in. So I had to keep like inching around in a very goofy way to get to the target, and it just seemed more clunky than the first game with the trailing missions, and you only see it one time. Unless there's like some side missions, you do some trailing missions, but I barely did them, so I don't know. As far as the main story is concerned, the trailing missions were very minimal to like only one time. The other thing that comes back from the first game is the first person investigation mode, and this is once I started realizing what was going on with these investigation modes, this is kind of when the feeling started to set in that this game wasn't ready, or at least wasn't intended, or I don't know, because these investigation scenes seem very, 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 very fucking easy and boring and mundane. Uh, the 90% of the game, when you use the fucking first person investigation mode, it's mostly to find out how to get somewhere. So you'll be in a outside, right? All right, we need to get to that window. All right, first person, we gotta investigate. How do I get there? Oh, I can climb up the fans up there. All right, we did it. Now that's it. That's like 90% of what that is used for. The other 10% is just very, very easy mode crime scene investigation shit, where you're investigating a crime scene. It's like, all right, there's a dead body. The blood's on the ground. There's flares that is pointing to the dead body, so obviously you want someone to see him. Oh yeah, and there's like rubble in the background. All right, figured it out. And it's like, this is what we're doing. Like, the first game, you're going through so many things that made you really like tear up the scene. Like, you're just like looking at every possible thing. This one, it's like, okay, there you go, you figured it out, good job. And it's like, this is stuff that like the police already figured out. Usually, a private investigator, I would assume, would look for stuff that the police would overlook. And almost every instance, you're looking at things that are easily looked at by the police, which is insane to me. It's like, why bother? Why bother then? There's another thing that kind of returns from the first game, and it's not used outside of side missions. So, in the first game, you'd get a picture and you try to find the person in a crowd. So you try to find the best one. So you have this criteria. You'd be like, okay, this guy has the hat, but he's not wearing the glasses and he doesn't have a beard. So that's not the guy we're looking for. And you keep going until you find that guy. In Lost Judgment, it's only in the side missions that you get that feature, which is kind of like, why? There's so many times in the story that leads you to think, oh, we're gonna try to find someone. It's like, all right, we gotta find this one guy. We don't have a name, but we gotta find him. Oh, he's right there. We figured it out. It's like, okay, like, cool. But they put that in the side mission where it's like, no one is really gonna see it or experience it, which is kind of a shame, because it was one of the most interesting like things in the game. The other thing that returns is the presenting of evidence, or asking questions, or coming to the right conclusions with certain suspects, whatever. And this also seems like they nerfed it completely for no reason, because there's no fail state. You don't really have to worry about failing. You literally guess every single thing until you get the right answer, because there's no reward for guessing right. There's no like bonus XP. Like the first game, they would give you bonus XP for asking the right questions, showing the right evidence, all of that. While in Lost Judgment, you can literally just sit there and just guess everything under the sun, and you'll get the same amount of XP as beating a mission. You will not have to worry about getting a game over. You'll just be able to keep going. So there's really no reason to not try. Like, you don't really have to think, which is kind of disappointing because Judgment had a lot of good think pieces that made you really think of what you're asking and what you're showing. This game, you don't really. The game doesn't give you any valid reason or motivation to have a interest in the evidence that you're getting, and it kind of demeans or undermines getting the evidence in the first place because the game slowly starts to break down into, can we just skip the evidence part and just get to the fight? I just wanted to fight someone now. I don't want to do this. Like, it's kind of insane because this is stuff that you would think that would be an issue in the first game where you would just get tired of doing the investigation shit. But it's actually Lost Judgment where that seems to be the issue, where you start to lose interest in the investigation because there's no reason to. So there's no clear motivation into caring for the evidence, that all that's left for you to even try is the combat. And the combat is not that good either. There's good like style switching in this game. They added a third style. I think the fourth one is the boxing one, which is DLC, which is, I don't know why that's the case, but whatever. Uh but they give you these other styles, and these styles fall to the same issue the class system has in Like a Dragon, where you'll just find a style that just works. The game will just will narrow you down to just either one or two styles. So there's one style called the Snake, which is a very fast moving style. It does a auto grab in a combo. So if you just mash punch or whatever, and then you just press triangle or Y or whatever, he will do an auto grab takedown pretty much. But that does not work on heavier enemies. So if you do that on a heavier enemy, just by sheer chance, he's gonna push you off and he'll leave you vulnerable. So it's like, why would I use this skill? It's not, because the game will slowly start to not give you uh just smaller enemy waves anymore. They'll just throw in like heavier enemies. So it's like there's really no point into using the Snake style. The crane, I think, is the one where we're just focused mostly on kicks. That one is good for crowd control, but it's also very slow at the same time. It's a very weird style. I never really think about that style when I have it. It's just kind of there. The tiger style is the best style. That one can handle everyone, and you don't have to worry about leaving yourself vulnerable. Now, the issue with the combat that is a big issue to me is Yagami can just move around despite where you're telling him to go. So let's say that there's an enemy right in front of Yagami. So you're moving the stick forward, let's say, like you're moving it up towards that enemy, and you're just mashing X, and then you press Y to do that satisfying finishing blow. Yagami will randomly just decide to do a 180 and punch backwards and leave himself wide open for an enemy to punish that whiff. And it's just like, why? I'm not moving the analog stick in any other direction. Why is Yagami going a completely different direction? Like, unless it's like some nuanced kind of thing with the combat that I just don't know about, it's like, I feel like I should be able to have better control of where Yagami's going when he's punching. Like, I kind of don't want to make this comparison all the time, but if you look at the Batman Arkham games, you have a good chance of like having Batman focus on the enemy that's in front of him. You don't have to worry about Batman going a different direction away from a bad guy, pretty much. While this one, Yagami just seems to flail all around and then just leaves himself open. So there's that. Then there are the boss fights, and the boss fights are kind of bullshit. Some of them are pretty easy. Some of them are just, I don't know why they were that easy, but whatever. And then there's some that are just straight up nonsense. So there's one where you're on a boat and it just throws endless waves of enemies at you while the boss is trying to shoot you. So he pulls out a gun and he just shoots you. So it's a good idea to keep him in line of the camera so you can like know when he's pulling out the gun, know when to dodge, all that kind of stuff. But when you're swarmed by enemies and Yagami's flailing around, you will have a harder time controlling the camera because you're trying to get away from like any instance of getting beat up or whatever. And you'll lose track of where the guy is with the gun just because the camera just refuses to like move half the time. And then like he'll just shoot you and you'll either die or be near death. And it just doesn't seem fair that he could just leave the camera and you'll be swarmed, and Yagami could just do some bullshit move where he leaves himself vulnerable and then get shot and killed. It's like, this is like everything I didn't want happen because the game is just weird like this. So I just didn't really enjoy some of these boss fights. A lot of these boss fights don't really seem fair. There's one in particular where you're fighting against a cafe. You fight this guy, and he has the perfect reactions to your attacks. So I end up having to cheese him by every time he would knock me down, I had to press that Y, which is triangle on PlayStation, wake up attack, where he would just kind of like kick him in the air or whatever, and then he would just do like a flip kick onto him while he's on the ground, whatever, that attack. I ended up having to cheese that attack all the time to win because I couldn't punch him. Because every time I tried to punch him, he would just kind of push me aside and all this stuff, and I couldn't really find a good opening. So it just left me just like, okay, I'll just spam the get up attack until I win, and that's how I won. And I left that fight thinking I shouldn't have won like that, but there really was no reason not to do it. So there's all these boss fights that are just kind of bullshit in some way, and I don't like doing this in a lot of games, but for Lost Judgment and Yakuza 4 were the only exceptions where I ended up just lowering the difficulty to easy temporarily for some of these fights because it's just not worth the hours of agony of dealing with these boss fights. So some of the boss fights I lowered it to easy just because it just wasn't worth my time, to be completely honest. And this also showed another issue with the game. So usually the reason why I play normal on every game is to get a good balance of challenge and to experience the stories. So I usually stick with normal, and then on New Game Plus runs or whatever I bump up the difficulty. Playing Lost Judgment, I just was like, normal is whatever. Normal is decent, like it's decently challenging and it's kind of fun, but when you're in a bullshit situation, it's like I'll lower it to easy. I don't think this is the easy mode that people who play on easy would like, to be completely honest, because it's not that, oh, well, Theo, it's easy, so of course the AI is going to do nothing. I'm not saying that, oh, easy should be harder, obviously, but the AI should at least do something. Like, they should do more than just stand there. Sure, it's easy mode, but I kind of think that easy mode is kind of fun when the AI is kind of doing something. When I play Devil May Cry 5, or just any Devil May Cry game for that matter, on easy, the AI doesn't just stand still and let you wail on them. They do fight, but it's not as intense, or they don't swarm you as much, etc. So I don't quite know why they made easy mode kind of like a bugged mode. It kind of feels like that easy mode wasn't meant to be this way, because the AIs are literally just standing there like this and they don't move. And I'm just like, did they not finish programming easy mode? Like, they not finish the balancing for this? Because easy mode seemed way too easy for what it is. Like, there should be at least some lighter challenge, but the AI shouldn't just stand there and take it on easy mode. So that is another issue. I feel like there might be some difficulty balancing issues. And sure, you could argue that this studio has bullshit AI when it comes to their games, because I think Yakuza 3 or 4 or both of them have a reputation for having AI that constantly blocks your attacks. So to a degree, it is par for the course for their games. You do have a lot of bullshit AI, but it's whatever. So the boss fights are just kind of weak. I don't really feel any incentive to changing styles when some of them could just leave you punished easily. So I just stick with Tiger the whole time, and that's where I put all of my XP in, pretty much. The skill trees are pretty good. I think these are more obtainable. one of my issues I had with Yakuza, and it was just a me problem, to be honest. I'm not gonna sit there and be like, oh, it's the game's fault, but I didn't really like that some of the skills were locked out because you had to do certain like side story shit. Like you have to do some kind of training with the guy with some guy to get some stuff like unlocked, which I didn't like. I just thought that I just like playing a game, getting experience to unlock something is much more rewarding than, oh, you did all this, but now you have to go to this other guy to get what you need to get that skill open. And I think it's kind of telling why that kind of unlock system kind of stopped in Yakuza and in Judgment. Uh, so the skill trees in Lost Judgment are pretty straightforward and solid. It's just a shame that there's really no incentive to try in the investigation to get more XP or anything. Uh, so now we get on with the story. It starts off with a dead body, and you're already interested. You're like, oh, holy shit! How does Yagami get involved in this? Holy shit! And then the game just throws you into this boring Saturday morning cartoon about bullying, and it is just really dull. Like I get that Yakuza and Judgment are pretty much soap operas. I get that, but this seemed like so corny and just bland. I just kind of cringe. Like there's a scene where you get called into this high school to investigate if there's bullying going on, and you notice that this girl named Koda is getting bullied by the bullies, pretty much. And you're like, all right. So they plant speakers underneath the student's desk. So when they start bullying Koda again, Yagami and his friends all go on their microphones and they start like, "Oh, you're no good, you bullies. You suck. You have to bully a little girl by yourself. Wow, you're pathetic." And then all the students start to chime in and be like, "Oh yeah, you're no good, you bullies. Get out of here." And the bullies are like, "Guys, they're yelling at us. We gotta go." And it's just like, this is kind of cringe. Like I get it. I get what they were going for with that, but it just seemed very, very, very fucking boring. It was just like, okay, like I was more interested in what happened kind of after that, because after that's solved, you have to figure out what's going on with Mikoshiba's case, because it's a little more interesting because a police officer was arrested for a groping in a subway. Is also a suspect in a murder case. So it's a little more interesting what's going on with that. So you stick around the school and you try to investigate any connection in that school with Mikoshiba or whatever his name is, and you come across a character named Sawa Sensei, which I'm just gonna call her Sawa, by the way. And this is the character I did like. Sawa was an interesting character that was kind of like compassionate. She cared about her students, and she was a good like compassionate character to have in a story like this. And it kind of helped with the climax of the story. It kind of helped raise the stakes later on. So throughout the game, like she's your only connection, and the bullies, funny enough, were the only connection to Mikoshiba. However, you start to realize, in my opinion, that the bullies connection is just kind of like a whatever connection. There's really nothing else there. Pretty much the high school was pretty much a dead end outside of Sawa. Sawa was the only like person there that's like, you know, a major player in the whole thing. Next to like it being the school that the police officer's son went to and committed suicide. So it's like, okay, that's straightforward. Though my issues with this story, it starts in a very boring way, and then it does, like right around the time where I was kind of contemplating stop of quitting, the story started to pique my interest. Like, oh, what's going on? This is like adding all this other layers to it. Like now there's this new gang called the RK that's also looking for another missing person, and they have this invested interest in what Yagami's doing. All this stuff that's going on, it starts to ramp up in a very good way, where it starts to build up more and more and more. You start to realize that maybe the groping is not what it seems. So they start to look at the groping as an alibi, and they start realizing that maybe the victim is in on it. And this was kind of where I was kind of interested. I was like, holy shit, we're gonna like do this. So I do like that the game does a decent job, like not making Yagami an asshole about it. Like, because obviously you don't want to go in front of every victim and be like, you're lying, you're a liar. So it does a good job, like, making Yagami not sound like a dick. Be like, yeah, I think you lied. So, yeah, if you got gripped, all right. At least it seemed more like that he was more into the first time we were interrogating Mayumi about it, where she's just like, yeah, like, where he was just like, okay, so like he came out this time, he didn't think you don't think there was another person, like, whatever, which is, it is what it is. So I do like that it does a good job kind of um building up the alibi as being fake, etc., and doesn't seem like Yagu's an asshole either. So it does a good job kind of like building up the alibi as being true, then dismantling it over time. But then you find out that Mayumi was being blackmailed into doing stuff for another guy. And this is kind of lead into a bigger issue I have with the story that I hated the ending about, but it leads into this character. Um, oh, I'm gonna blink out his name. His real name is Kitsakata, Kit Kat. I'm just gonna call him Kit Kat, dude. It's Kawana. Kawana is the fake name he assumes. And I like Kawana as, like, yeah, he was a teacher. He failed to stop bullying, and he felt so like he was filled with regret that it kind of poisoned him. And I do like that it shows the darker end of all that kind of vigilante shit. It's just he blackmailed these other students that, sure, I would argue, and I don't it's rough because it's like you're kind of an outsider to and watching what's going on, and you don't really want to assume that people like intentionally drive people to suicide. Like, they just bully them, but they wouldn't bully them with the intent of them committing suicide. I mean, it is what it is with that, but they I think, to me, since these students that Kawan is blackmailing into doing his dirty work, I would have liked it to be more of like which one of them are more like remorseful and which one truly feels bad about what happened, because I couldn't help but feel bad for Mayumi for being blackmailed, because she has a family, she has a kid and all this stuff, and she was forced to be roped into assisting in murder. And I'm just saying that, like, I get she was like a bully back when she was a kid, but a lot of people do fucked up shit when they're kids, and they might grow up to be very, very like regretful of what they did. So I would have liked it a little bit more for Kawana's character to be like, I to only like blackmail people who are not as remorseful or whatever. Like, they show this one bully that drop kicked the kid in the video you find. I can't remember his name, but he was one of the people that RK is also finding. So you see this drop kick happen. That guy that goes missing and all this stuff. He was a piece of shit. He should have been blackmailed to do shit, because, I mean, of course, I don't think he was in no, he was in the same class. Holy shit. Yeah, they bullied him, but yeah, like a character like that, I should say. Okay, a character like that should have been the one that be blackmailed into doing crimes, not the ones that have a chance of having a happy family. I think that, and it didn't really stick to me that Mayumi was like, yeah, I bullied him. It is what it is. Like, she might have said, like, well, back then, like, you're a kid and you have power. Like, of course you're gonna pick on the weak. Like, it's high school, which is like, anyone would say that. Like, it's not, so like, it's not really like, oh, see, she didn't care. It's like anyone could say that about anyone. Like, the people who got bullied, people who were the bullies, people who were not bullied or bullies could say that too. Like, everyone could say that. So it's like, that's not really evidence that she didn't give a shit what happened. Like, so I think holding her accountable for what she said when she was a kid is a little much. But if like, a person that age could just say, like, it's years ago, we're still talking about that, like, that's an attitude that should be like, yeah, this guy's a fucking asshole. But if someone's like, yeah, I feel really bad about it, like, I really feel regretful and all this, whatever, like, I'm not a story writer, someone else could write this better than me, but like, I just feel like there could have been any redeeming qualities with some of these people that were coerced into doing this murder stuff, and for the game to just kind of shit on them and just be like, yeah, okay, it's like, you give this person a family, and you're making her do like crime, and there's no comeuppance for Kawana for doing this. Like as much as you could say, well, they're bullies, Theo. Kawana committed a crime. Blackmailing is bad. Like you could go to, it's a crime to exploit people. Like isn't it? I'm pretty sure extortion is illegal, and that's pretty much a form of blackmail. And it's just like it's not in it. Like it's not. It shouldn't be like looked at as like he was doing it to bad guys. Like this isn't even that related because this was something that happened when they were kids. They could have changed from then. So to blackmail them over this could be kind of malicious and mean when they could have been remorseful by the time that they grew up. Like it's whatever. So the story introduces this area of like morality with Kuwana and his relationship with his ex students that he blackmails into doing crimes with him and all this stuff. So I'm thinking that it's gonna actually go into this area where it's like they're gonna bust Kawana on this, but it's gonna show that like what he's doing is like the extreme bad of what to do or whatever, like that's gonna be the message. Like, oh yeah, he did this thing he's doing right, but he's actually like also bad or whatever. The story ends with him like getting away with it to the point where like this is where it fell apart for me. Yagami throughout the whole story was pissed off at Kawana for Sawa's death. Sawa gets killed in the middle of the story because RK wanted to get to them. So Sawa was the only one that knew about Kawana, so she was kind of collateral damage throughout the whole thing. Which is like kinda like fucked up. And you think that would fuel Yagami more for wanting to bust Kawana because there's like that's fucked up. She died for the shit he did, whatever, and he is not remorseful. He's not gonna stop either. So by the end, he's like, "All right, Kawana, you need to change your identity and go back in the shadows." I'm just like, that's it. And then Kawana just gives such a bullshit line. He knows he can't arrest me because he has nothing on me. And I'm just like, there's nothing on you. There's like phone calls about you talking about the about the murders to whatever. You're talking about like he ran a fucking business almost to killing bullies. There's no evidence in that. Okay, so when Mamiya whatever was saying that she was in contact with him and he had text messages with them and all this stuff. Like he sent her a text message of a dead body, mind you, and that's not evidence that Kawana was involved. Like, and it's also a group of people that were victim to Kawana's extortion or whatever the fuck. They can't like be like, yeah, he did it. Look at he did this to me. He used this phone, and they could place him, they could name him, they could do all this stuff, but there's no evidence to hold him. Like, I guess the only thing you could say is that there's no hard evidence. Like there's no like fingerprints of Kawana on any crime scene, whatever, except for the dead body of that guy where they honestly could have figured out because he said like he has the detonator on him and if you move the dead body it would explode, right? So all Yagami had to do, get this, retrieve the detonator, keep the detonator on him, call the police or whatever, and have them disarm the bomb and be like, hey, we have fingerprints of him. Now, of course, you could say, well, that's gonna have like the that health minister's fingerprints too, but she was already willing to turn herself in. So that was all bullshit. The whole storyline with Kawana is honestly the dumbest thing, and I fucking hated it. It was just like there's no comeuppance for him, and if you're gonna tell me, well, the comeuppance is that he's gonna have to hide in the shadows, that's not really good enough for a guy like Kawana, where he operated in the shadows many times in the past. Like, it doesn't really make sense for anyone to think that he got his comeuppance. It's such bullshit. I really didn't think that was resolved at all, if not in a good way. It just seemed like Kawana got away with committing a crime because, well, he was punished. He was killing bullies, but it's like there's no like they don't delve into the gray area of that. They don't explore it. Like they propose it, they propose like, well, like they don't propose it directly, but you think about it innately because when you see Mamiya and you see her in the video, you're like, holy shit, she was involved in the bullying. And then you see her now, she's like, she has a kid, she has a happy life, and she just wanted to be a good mom, pretty much. Like they don't delve into her character as to like maybe she seems more remorseful about what happened. Like it wasn't like they don't really go into that with her. The closest you get is honestly her just saying like, "Oh, well, it's like when you're the strongest, you just fight the weakest or whatever." And it's like that's like such a bland statement to make. Like anyone could say that about anything. So it's just all the stuff that happens with Kawana and all and his accomplices never go anywhere, and it's like we shouldn't really be rooting for Kawana, and it doesn't seem like Yagami wants to either. So why is Yagami helping him fade into the darkness? Like, shouldn't he be pursuing him? Like, it's just kind of bullshit to me. I didn't really like that. I'm sure someone's gonna tell me that there's all these good reasons for letting Kawana go, but it did not seem that uh satisfying to me about that. Then they try to rope in this conspiracy with the government, which is like that seemed so last minute in the story. Like it kind of came in the last leg of the story where it's like, yeah, uh, like they want to control the health minister, so they're just gonna blackmail her about the body, about the murder, and all this stuff, and they're controlling RK to get information on her, all this stuff, and I'm just like, that's it's interesting that that's how they tie in RK because they introduce RK so early on, and it doesn't seem there's any hard connection with anything that's going on. It seems really random for the longest time. Like when they first introduced RK, I almost thought this was like a side story. Like, um, in Judgment One was the threat meter stuff. That's all like a side story thing. I thought it was gonna be that kind of deal with RK, and it was actually more involved with the government conspiracy that was going on. The which which I will say the arcade stuff kind of tied in pretty well. Like I do think that I was nervous arcade was just not going to be connected in a meaningful way. It had a meaningful connection, I guess. It's just that the story I felt didn't need RK. Like it did not need that whole conspiracy with it because I think everything else was airtight and being a good story. And throwing RK and throwing the government stuff seems so last minute because they kind of delve into like that she's helping the country. She's helping Japan like recover. So do you really want to stop what's going on to and impede what she's doing? But it's like yeah, that's like a good dilemma to have, but at the same time it's like murder is murder, and like you know it's just if she I would argue that it might have been easier for her in the long run for her to just confess to the crime and serve the punishment for it, and then she could run a campaign on like you know people need a second chance, all this stuff, etc., etc. Like, and it wasn't also like she didn't kill in necessarily cold blood, but it's just I didn't think that the dilemma that they were proposing was that satisfying to be like, oh shit, should she? Oh man, like it felt like that you should have felt that way, but not really. Uh, and again, like as I said, like Sawa was like the heart of the story, so her death was pretty impactful. Like it was pretty sad. The only thing I kind of want to just call out as being kind of weird is that throughout the game there's no like chemistry between Yagami and Sawa, like zero chemistry. It's just I need information. All right. Oh, you're gonna help me out. Okay, like it's just kind of whatever. Like it's not like they hated each other, but it was just like okay. The only one that kind of like that could have had it. Like they didn't really give it any chance to develop, but there could have been something with Kaito and Sawa that they could have like done that angle, and then they could have just gone with that a little bit more because then her death would be more impactful for Kaito, and then like that could have also impacted you because Kaito could be doing something stupid, and you could just be like, oh, I need to save my buddy, whatever. Like it seemed really weird that Yagami, like, it was sad that when she died, sure, but like Yagami was the only one that was like truly affected because throughout the whole game, like he was like going through all this stuff because of that, and it got to the point where like Kaio, who was like crushing on fucking Sawa, it was like, I don't know, man. Like he was just kind of saying like, gotta be careful or whatever. Like just kind of backing out. I was like, Kaio, you wanted to be with her. You're just like backing off. Like, well, like Yagami's like, no, I gotta do this for Sawa. Like, shouldn't he be more supportive in what he's trying to do? Like, he was like behind him all the way, and then at the very end, suddenly he's like, oh, I don't know. The other thing that this game tried to do was try to reincorporate the bullies in the mid part of the ending, like near the end game, and that also was just kind of lazy too. It's like, oh, all right, she was hanging out with the yakuza for no reason. Bad news. I'm like, why would she go there? Like what would drive her to go to that person specifically? I don't know, whatever. And then Koda was there too, like, and then they were used as hostages, and it's like, okay, like whatever, whatever. To lure them out, which is fine, it served a purpose. But it just seemed like so like bizarre. Like it seemed kind of forced to be like, all right, we have to get this character to bring Koda with her to meet this guy who's part of like RK, and then like that's just gonna happen to them, and then that's gonna lure Yagami out, which is like okay. And then like he shot a paintball gun at one of the girls, and I low key kinda thought it would have been better if it was a real bullet, because that would have been more like holy shit. And it's like, it's just paint. It's all good. I mean, I guess to a degree, it's like, well, we can't kill a kid, you know. But you're you're a soap opera. You add to the drama, whatever. And then okay, so now let's get to the end game of the story a little bit more. There's a guy derails itself into this random scene where this random kid's getting bullied, and then the bullies that you saw in the beginning of the game come out and help around and doing the same trick. You're no good, you bullies. You're teaming up on her. Wow, you're a scum. And then everyone else in the city are like, yeah, you suck, bullies. Leave. And they're like, okay, guys, they hate us. Time to go. And part of me was low-key kind of sitting there thinking, how come no adult is saying anything? Like a teacher I could understand to a degree or whatever, or other students, but like these are like adults that that don't have to see these kids every day. Like I don't know. I feel like they would have more of a reason to like more of a motive to interject, but whatever. It is what it is. But it's supposed to be this cute moment where it's like, yeah, look what happened. Now the bullies are protecting the bullied. And that was another scene I fucking cringed. Like, it was meant to be this heartwarming scene. I was just like, oh, come on. And it went nowhere. Like, it didn't. You could remove that scene, and it wouldn't detract from the whole experience of the game. Uh, the Ahara court scene is pretty cool. Like, I do like that you get to, like, finally show the truth of what's going on. And it does have a satisfying ending where it ends with them, like Ahara is cooperating with the investigation, and they're all like getting their just desserts, except for Kawana, which is fucking bullshit, as I said. So this story is such a disappointment spike in interest. Like in Judgment 1, it was so interesting in seeing what was going on. You were seeing like Yakuza members getting killed left and right, just randomly, and you're just like, what's going on? And then you find out as you went on that it had some ties to your previous case out of nowhere. And then you find out, oh, it's this Alzheimer's drug that they're testing. The only thing I would say is kind of dumb about that is that I feel like they kind of exaggerate the symptoms to make their point more like clear, but it's whatever. It's just that Judgment had a more interesting like pacing to it, where it had good rising action. It really left you guessing. You were always on your feet trying to figure out what's going on. While like Lost Judgment, you pretty much solved it like halfway through, and then you're just like, okay, so when does this end? Like by the time that Sawa gets killed, the only mystery you have is how is RK involved, and that's like pretty much solved in like the next chapter from that point or so, where you're like, oh, it's because of the government. Okay, and that's it. Like there really is nothing that's engaging about what's going on. Like it starts off that way, like it starts off boring, then it gets interesting, and then right when you get to the climax of Sawa's death, it just kind of flounders on a straight line. So what would I score Lost Judgment? I would give it a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad game. Like if you like Judgment and you just want to pick up Lost Judgment to just see this new story, I would recommend it. It's just that it is such a disappointment on gameplay, story, and yeah, just gameplay and story. The two main things are the most disappointing. Nothing seems very utilized, and everything just seems like a afterthought. So it really did feel like this game was not supposed to come out this year or at all, and they just threw it out. They just spat it out, and it doesn't necessarily help the case that a lot of people can like say that, well, yeah, they recycle assets, but their stories are interesting and their gameplay is fun and all this stuff. But Lost Judgment honestly feels like the laziest version of a sequel. Like, it just feels so bare bones as to what to add, and it also is very short. I honestly don't remember how long Judgment is. Uh, but ultimately though, I do think that Yakuza and Judgment usually average like 12 to 15 chapters. I think the longest is like 20 something, and that's Yakuza 0 and maybe another Yakuza game. But even then, this game also felt very quick on top of that. It just didn't feel that rewarding, and the side missions were just. I honestly forgot to even mention them because they're just dull. Like a dragon, I found myself just doing all the side content because they were fun and they had good presentation to them. They had voice acting for the beginning of the side story and the ending of the side story, so at least that kind of motivated people to do them. While in Lost Judgment, you just had quiet text and you just had to read it, which is fine. That's how Yakuza's always been. But it's just kind of jarring that Like a Dragon was able to do that, but Lost Judgment couldn't. They couldn't get any voice acting done. Like I would have at least accepted the Japanese voice acting at that point. If you're just not gonna have the English dub voice the beginning of a sub story and the ending of it, but they were just ultimately boring. There was only one that I thought was really good, which is the one where you're trying to solve like some curse of a cat statue. Like that one is really good, but I never had any of the motivations to do the others. They all seemed really dumb and just kind of boring, so I just never did them. So yeah, I forgot to mention the side stories in this video almost, but that's really the problem. The side stories were just that boring. And I almost forgot to mention that the game does take time to force you to do side missions. And I said this before, I believe, that side missions should never be forced on you. You should want to do side missions because you want to, not because, oh, you can't advance the story right now, so just kill some time. It's like, no. If I want to kill some time, I'll do it on my own time. But I just want to do the story. I don't want to do the side missions right now. So that is my issues with Lost Judgment. I wanted to put it out in a video just because like I couldn't fit it in with the usual game club I do with Charles. And that's kind of what these individual ones are usually meant for. Is just me to go in a game that I have no time to go over in those videos. So thank you for watching. Again, if you want to support me, feel free to check the description below. Follow me on Twitter, my art Twitter. Follow me on Twitch. Join my Patreon. Join my Discord. If you join my Patreon or become a Twitch sub, you will have access to an exclusive gameplay video of me playing Game Club games, such as last one I uploaded was on Wonderful 101. I should do one for Deltarune at some point, so that's coming up. And that is it. Thank you for watching. Have a good week, everyone. See you when I see ya. Bye-bye.